Hello, everybody. Dan here. We haven't had that many technical issues with our show. However, we did lose the audio with Vasili Mattheos podcast. So it may be a little different listening, but it is worth the listen. It's actually one of my favorite guests on. Great conversation. He's got a really good story and they run an amazing business over there. So listen to his story and thanks again for listening. Hello, everybody. This is the Winning in Winnipeg podcast, where we talk to top performing business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and local Winnipeg celebrities. We get to learn who they are, how they think, and we get to hear their perspective about what's really going on in Winnipeg and their business. Vasili Mattheos is the founder and principal of Amphora Architecture, a Winnipeg-based team of architects, interior designers, and design professionals. Vasili received his Master in Architecture degree from Harvard University's Graduate School of Design, where he studied as a Frank Knox Fellow under many of the world's foremost design educators and practitioners. His design experience is both extensive and international, having worked on multiple high-rise projects across 3 continents, New York City's Hudson Yards, Moynihan Train Hall, and other projects including work on offices, retail, schools, post-secondary, multifamily, hotels, and gaming facilities. Do you listen to podcasts at all?
Well, yeah, I love Tim Ferriss, and I used to be a serial Tim Ferriss podcast addict. I fell off the last little while, but
Do you think it's because they're 4 hours long? That's a huge commitment.
Yeah, I think they started short, didn't they? Weren't they like 40 minutes or an hour?
Because I used to listen too.
Yeah.
But then some got like 3 hours.
Yeah, you got
4 hours long.
Part.
It's like, oh my God, This is crazy.
Yeah. And actually, like a lot of things, it kind of, sometimes the volume of podcasts almost becomes too much of a commitment. Like if you're a bit of a perfectionist, it's like, oh man, I gotta catch up, or I missed a whole bunch of them. I must be a bad Tim Ferriss fan.
The worst, actually.
Yeah.
He did point you out on there. I'm sorry, you missed that one though, so that's fine.
Self-flagellating here.
It is.
Yeah. And wrecking the mic setup here.
You're actually the first architect that I've had on here, believe it or not.
Thank you. It's an honor.
I know, I've been chasing you for a while.
Yeah. Sorry, I finally made it over here.
It's perfect. Yeah. Like it worked out really well. So I suppose the big thing is I would like everyone to kind of hear who you are, how you came to be, a little background, a little origin story on you.
Okay.
However deep you go or shallow you go, I'll just keep on digging and we can go from there.
No problem. Okay, so I guess this is kind of a formal intro.
Yeah, you don't really need to introduce yourself because I'll do that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just how did you were you born and raised Winnipeg?
Yeah. I am. I was born in Winnipeg. Parents immigrated from Greece in the 60s and 70s. So yeah, I grew up here. Lived my first part of my adult life here. I moved out to the States for a bit for school and the beginning of my career, and then I circled back, and here I am back in Winnipeg, enjoying it.
So you came back to Winnipeg.
I
got out.
Yeah.
And it sucked you back in.
Yeah, I kind of made it my mission to get out of Winnipeg. It was partly kind of just wanting to get out of the house, right? And just exploring the world and seeing what was out there. And
how old were you?
I was 22 when I moved out. I got a scholarship to go to grad school. It was kind of like the perfect excuse to move out of the house and be my own independent adult. So I lived on the East Coast for I think a total of 6 years between school and starting to work.
Nice.
Got burnt out a little bit, came back, and realized that Winnipeg is kind of like this VIP gem of a city that not too many people know about. So I was in Boston, and then I was in New York City, and Boston's a very livable city, but New York is really rough. It is. There's a ton of competition. I don't want to sound like I couldn't kind of cut it out there, but a lot of things were just kind of a pain in the butt, to do.
Very different, yeah.
I'd come back here and there for holidays and visit my family and kind of look at how my siblings were living and how my friends were living. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
You don't hate everyone outside?
That's right, yeah. And everyone's just kind of laid back here. And not only that, they had time to do, extracurricular activities and time to raise kids and follow their hobbies and sort of, just pursue their interests. And it was something that just seemed really alien to me.
Right.
So just to kind of go back, I was in New York working at SOM, which is Skidmore, Owings Merrill. All about SOM, right? The Burj Khalifa, World Trade Center, a lot of iconic towers. It was just where I wanted to be after grad school. Like, to me, that was just like the crown jewel of architecture firms on the planet, and it was freaking cool. I was on Wall Street, 14 Wall Street, which is across the street from the stock exchange, and you saw the stockbrokers kind of getting really frustrated as they're pushing European tourists out of the way who are taking photos of the big flags, and back then, that was 2006. There was still a lot of 9/11 carryovers, so big scary guys in body armor and helmets sometimes, and the big guns. And remember eating a sandwich on the steps of Federal Hall, which is like a version of the Parthenon on Wall Street. Eating some sandwiches with some workmates, and there's a guy with a big frickin' gun behind us, and so it was just a very weird place. And like I said, it was super fulfilling, and the architecture, it doesn't get any bigger or cooler than that. But I don't know. I kind of I like it here. It's a very human place to be.
It's a different lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. So what do you think the biggest differences are in between, well, you said Boston, New York, Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Clearly there's a palpable difference between New York and Winnipeg. Tell me about Boston.
Boston's a cool city. Actually, Boston's funny because, and it's for sure changed since I left. It always, even though it's a really large city, if it were in Canada, I don't know if it would be, the size of Toronto or close to that or bigger. I'm not really sure. I guess it all depends on, where you draw the boundary. Like, it's,
the metropolitan area surrounding.
Urban agglomeration.
Right,
Kind of more of an art than a science, right?
Yeah.
However, it seemed like Boston was always kind of like, well, we're not New York, and then the joke at the time was, people from New York didn't even know that Boston existed, but you were in Boston and you were, excited to get on. Back then, it was the Chinatown bus. You go from Chinatown to Chinatown. That was a common fun thing to do on a weekend, to get on the bus for 4 hours and go to New York for like a day or whatever. So I don't think many people from New York were coming to Boston for the weekend, right? But just like really rooted in history, it's like 1600s and before. So you're kind of almost scratching Middle Ages at that point. I know I'm getting that completely wrong, but definitely a few centuries older than this part of the world.
What about the people? How about dealing with the people between New York and Boston?
Yeah, man, you're making me think here, and digging through this, like blow the cobwebs off of this like memory chest here. I did spend most of my time around other students and faculty when I was in Boston at school. A lot of kids, I guess they're kids now because they're in their 20s. I thought we were all really grown up back then. But
didn't we all?
Yeah. From around the world. So Boston seemed like just a very knowledgeable city. Like there were just so many people who were there. Just like there are dozens of universities there. Lots of research, healthcare. Like it's just kind of a knowledge-based place, and you got the sense that a lot of people that you bumped into were just they're like just knew a lot about stuff. that was just kind of like an intuitive thing. I felt it was a very intelligent city. New York was kind of, it attracted a lot of ambitious people, but it also had, like a lot of ordinary people just, who were living there. And just, New York is strange because it is, we think about it as the richest city, right, in North America, but it covers the full spectrum, right? So it's also the dumpiest place. It's got the best and it's got the worst and everything in between, and everything on that spectrum in very large quantities. To the point where, see, like in Winnipeg, you're kind of here, you can have the whole city in your head. You sort of know where all the neighborhoods are. Mm-hmm. You've probably been on that street. So that was something that was kind of new for me, to be in a place where I knew, like, even if I lived here a lifetime, I probably wouldn't ever know this whole city.
Right.
So that was kind of terrifying a little bit and interesting. And then, of course, you scale out and you realize the whole world is like that. There's like a famous, I think it was like a New Yorker cover at some point. It had, the world according to New Yorkers. And it was basically just the city. There's nothing past it because it's so overwhelming.
I've heard that multiple times.
Yeah.
There's really nothing beyond that.
I'm taking up all the air here, Dan.
This is not my show. This is the Vasili show right now. So you came back to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Did you start Amphora right away?
No.
Did you work for someone? What happened there?
Yeah. I worked, I was at number 10 for almost 5 years. I learned a ton while I was there. And I became an architect while I was there. And it was, a number of circumstances led me to striking it out on my own, and I haven't looked back.
Did you have any other jobs before going to architecture school, or in the interim?
Worked for my parents at their restaurant. We were so, like, I would say maybe 90% of second generation, born here, Greek Canadian kids in Winnipeg. Family was in the restaurant business. So my parents had a place in Headingley, just past the racetrack. It was called Steve and Nicky's. It used to be called Dairy King way back. Might have been some copyright infringement. I don't know how that ever, what exactly led to that. Yeah, that's kind of a dark part of the history. But seriously, it was, like a classic greasy spoon, and it, like a lot of the, gem burger places in town, it had, the Fat Boy. We called it the King Special, but it's, the same thing with the Greek chili and the, goopy mayo and heaping portions and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, breakfast and whatnot. But it was, I kind of, like, that was an education in itself, because my parents put me to work when I was 11. So serving tables, washing dishes, taking cash, working on the grill, and I hated it at one point, and then I kind of really liked it towards the end of my stint when I was 22, because it was kind of fun. It was fun, meeting people and seeing the same people over and over again. And, having just stuff in common with random people.
Yeah. I think everyone should have to work in a restaurant at least once. At least interacting with people. You didn't learn how to talk to people, read people. Yeah. That's a big one, right?
Yeah, and actually it's interesting because I think there were some stressful situations that happened that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, at school, and just being like, well, what just happened? Random stuff that would happen with people who came in, and then just thinking about it, going wow, I didn't know how to handle that or what happened. Yeah, so the kind of on the spotness of the restaurant world is it's good training. It's and then feeling, I'm sure most of your audience is from Winnipeg, and I'm just knowing people here, it seems like most people in Winnipeg, have worked at a restaurant at some point, so maybe I'm kind of preaching to the choir. But
all three people in the audience.
Yeah, there are 350 gajillion
We're getting there.
Yeah. You have situations where things are actually out of control. It's like you're maxed out. Like there's actually no way you're gonna do these 7 things now. Like you're kind of like you're blue screening. And I remember there was like moments where it's like, this is a blue screen moment. Like I don't know what to do. And then that skill of being able to kind of reboot during a blue screen and just sort of figuring out how to get an impossible situation cleared up, or and being okay with the fallout that ensued.
Yeah. Well, even making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
You didn't prioritize properly, and now
That's right.
Mom and Dad have to talk to you.
Yep.
Whether it's an employer or your parents or anything like that. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Like, I actually worked in a Greek restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
when
right.
I was in high school.
All right.
I cut the tip of my finger off.
Did you?
Yeah, it prevented me from doing my grade 8 piano exam.
Okay.
And
And that wasn't on purpose at all.
well, I maybe subconsciously, but no, didn't plan on it. So yeah,
Looks okay though. Yeah.
It grew back, but
Okay.
now it really actually it hurts to play guitar.
So what did you do?
I was
What were you cutting?
I was a prep
Okay.
in the back.
Okay.
I was a dishwasher prep cook,
Okay.
and I was chopping up lettuce.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because I sliced my thumb open cutting lettuce.
Mm.
My left thumb. I've got stitches here.
That is
so.
to Greek restaurant injury.
We are connected.
I think so.
On some
That's
other
the thing.
dimension, which is
Okay.
hilarious because I remember telling a cousin of mine, it had just happened. One of my first cousins, and she kind of like looked at me funny. She's like, "You don't frickin' cut lettuce. You just kind of like smush it on the board, and the bottom part kind of comes out, and you rip the pieces. What were you cutting lettuce for?" It's like, damn.
I think I was young, and I think that was one of my first. That was definitely one of my first jobs. We delivered papers from a very early age.
Okay.
Like before in elementary school, before going to school,
Mm-hmm.
we used to get up at like 6 a.m. and go deliver papers. I remember hating it.
That's awesome discipline.
Oh yeah, my
Yeah.
parents pushed that
Uh-huh.
huge, and I never really thought about it until, either I think about my kids or I think about when I hear people talk about their early jobs, right?
Mhm.
And actually what's kind of formed them. Like it's really neat. I bet you learn an incredible amount from your parents, pushing that. Now, so tell me. When you started Amphora, we'll get into the mindset of starting
Mhm.
your own thing, but
Mhm.
tell me about Amphora a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So like the elevator speech that I keep having to redo in my head. So
You have all the time. It's not 30 seconds.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're a group. We're a group here based in Winnipeg. We've got architects, interior designers, some support staff, and we design stuff. We design interiors, we design parts of buildings, and we design full buildings. We've been working a lot more lately in the private sector for business owners that are kind of like me, professional service providers, and it's interesting because most people I think don't really know what architects do. Like they have an idea of what an architect does. Just kind of create some stuff on a piece of paper and things sort of magically come together.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's almost like that part of the sentence. Things magically come together. Like that's kind of what we do. We are part of any kind of building project really from inception to like literally final sign off, because it's our final sign off that kind of ends the thing legally.
Right.
There's like a lot to talk about what we do. And when you go into architecture school, you're doing doing art projects and you're writing essays. You learn how to write really well, and you learn about history, and you learn how to try to overcome those blue screen moments again, like studio projects. There used to be a show called Project Runway. Actually now they've got Greatest Chef and all that kind of stuff. That's basically like architecture school in a nutshell, but you use like glue and knives, and now it's like laser cutters and 3D printers and stuff. But you're working all night, not getting enough sleep by yourself, with no help, because if you get help, it's cheating. And then with no sleep, you know, kind of stumble through what's usually like a really crappy presentation, because it would have been so much better if you had, you know, just paced yourself better. And then you go from there, you know, super creative, open-minded education, and you get thrown into this real world, and you're dealing with like, you know, like building codes and like actual construction. And it's freaky because like it's like, wait, what just happened? You know, and you're moving toilets around and dimensioning stuff, and you're working on these big scary drawings that look nothing like what you did in school.
Yep.
And I think a lot of professions have this kind of general thing in common, where there's the schoolwork, and then there's
that gap, right, in between.
Yeah.
The technical knowledge of it and the actual experience.
Exactly. And then, so for us, it's kind of built into the system because they've got an internship. So you do X amount of hours and then you write your exams. So like by the time you finish your internship and you write your exams, you know, you've kind of seen enough of it that, you know, you've taken enough bruises that society deems you to be...
We've beat him up enough.
Yeah. This guy's kind of okay to practice on his own. It was basically what it is.
He didn't die, quit, or kill anyone.
That's right. So. Yeah, and he will continue to make sure that he doesn't kill anybody. You know, in the course of his work.
That's a plus.
You know, like acting ethically and professionally, and worrying about stuff like that's. So I guess going back to when I started at Amphora, I mean, I had some really cool experience going into it, working on, you know, conceptually, like a 7-star hotel, and Moynihan Station, which is basically a reconstruction of Penn Station in what's called the James Farley post office. Actually, so Moynihan Station just opened, I think it was last year, and I was working on that in like 2006. So, you know, like the scale of the projects there is just amazing. So, you know, so got a lot of firsthand knowledge on mega projects, you know, at the front end of things, and a little bit into the technical drawings. And then here practicing, you know, kind of went through, actually saw projects go from beginning, middle to end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, which were like big projects at a Winnipeg scale. And then, you know, diving into the deep end on my own, there was still kind of like a lot of kind of scary moments at the beginning, saying, man, I don't have anybody to talk to. I gotta figure this all out on my own. I can't, you know, I can't just like, you know, pull somebody in and have them sort of hold my hand and like mentor me. Like the mentoring's over, man. And so the first project I did on my own, it was like the steepest learning curve ever. And I got out of it, and it's like, man, this thing, like, this worked out. This is a success, and after that, you know, the confidence just kind of keeps building and building, and you know, you kind of like worry less, but your brain is still trained to not necessarily worry all the time, but just kind of make sure you thought about everything you should have thought about. So.
Processes.
Yeah, to a point where you almost don't even think you're doing it. You're just kind of like asking all these random questions, and you're just like, okay, so that's good. I covered that. Perfect.
Yeah. It's tell me what the mindset of working at a firm and then maybe either having an aha moment or falling and hitting your head and becoming a crazy business owner / entrepreneur. How did that, tell me, like, what prompted it? And then really, where did you find, and I'll use the word courage to do it, because it's not easy, and it's not easy not to fail and or quit. So take me through that. Yeah.
So I guess I'll start with going from having like a job where you work with family to like a job at a school where you're dealing with people who don't unconditionally love you. You know, that's really rough when you realize, like, you know, you're kind of on your own. And so that was kind of like the first little aha moment for me. It's like, oh, geez, like, I'd better behave, right? Like,
it's real.
Yeah. They're not, you know, we're not going to like hug it out in the end, right? And I learned that, you know, working at other people's offices, right? You're at the mercy always of the strength of your relationships with people, right? I mean, I guess that's the case now still, but that was sort of the working at an office as an employee, right? You started appreciating that you've got to maintain strong relationships if you're going to stick around.
If you want to get anything done.
Done, exactly. If people are going to help you, and I mean that's even more important than ever now. What was the question again, Ben?
It's really like, how did you become crazy enough to want to start your own thing?
Yeah, right. I always kind of visualized myself as doing my own thing.
Beautiful.
Like as a little kid.
Okay.
I guess the delusions of grandeur kind of, slowly fade, as the years click on. So, as a kid, I kind of thought I was going to be the master of the universe. And now I'm just going to be really happy being like a really great architect in Winnipeg. And I think that's awesome now.
You still could become master of the universe, though.
Yeah,
you got time.
When I close my eyes, I can go there anytime. But yeah, what made me want to do that? I think I always wanted to do that, whether it was going to be like a firm that I was working at to, kind of move up, or, just take the bull by the horns and just do it on my own. And so, there's something romantic about, doing it the cowboy way and just kind of throwing everything you have at it, because it's almost like up until that moment, if I was able to just kind of throw everything I had, something great would happen. And running a business is like where you realize like, wow, like the world is like really like, there are a lot of knives getting thrown at you, and you gotta
landmines
be really
everywhere.
tough. Yeah. And so never like a lack of desire, but holy man, a lot of moments where you're like, what am I even doing here? Why am I doing this? And I think the biggest challenge, even so, I'm on like year 10. I guess I've completed like 9 years at Amphora. It was like March 1st, 2013. It was like when officially went open shop.
Beautiful.
There's when you're kind of small at the beginning and you're just by yourself, you don't have enough time to do everything. You realize that actually in order to just kind of stay open, you have to be doing like a few jobs simultaneously, and then that can be frustrating. And then kind of growing out of that's where all like the little aha moments show up. And then if you can kind of figure out like who's a good person to work with, how to delegate stuff, and I think there's a lot of luck. There's a lot of times where like you did everything perfectly and there's some external thing out of your control. And I think it's common in our field too, where it's like, the project just didn't happen. Something just didn't get approved. So also sort of learning to live with that and hedge those things and have many things going at any given time so that, the thing is just moving forward on its own. There's no one aha moment. It's kind of like there's I just kill my wife like almost every day. It's like, hey, I've got an idea. She's like, you got an idea again? Yeah. And then, and there's like literally something new to talk about every day for like 9 years, 10 years. Like that's how freaking vast this like universe of running your own business is. It's like it doesn't get old. You're still learning stuff. I think that's kind of one of the major differences between sort of working somewhere else. You could actually get bored. And I think a lot of people do get bored, and I certainly got bored for a bit. But you, not because the place wasn't interesting and the projects weren't interesting. It's just sometimes people get bored, and when you're on your own, you can't get bored.
There's too many problems to get
you'll get scared before you get bored.
Yeah. So jumping in, starting out, the one thing I really like about the podcast is it kind of wherever people are in their life. So whether it's somebody that's ready to go to architecture school, I had a friend reach out and say, hey, my son's thinking about architecture. What do you think? And then we kind of dove into his strengths, and he's mathematical and artistic and creative.
Awesome.
I was like, well,
sounds like a smart guy.
That sounds, pretty good. Maybe you should explore it, right? But it could be, somebody working at another firm. They've seen you, or they're thinking about starting their own, and just kind of wherever they are, they can kind of relate. So, what was you started up? What do you think the hardest, the biggest challenge was right when you opened up? Was it getting the jobs? Was it, building the back end, the admin, the processes? What was it?
I think at the beginning it was, it's funny because the jobs were kind of coming. I was, I was doing stuff that I wouldn't do now, like, just the cold calling, like random places. It was kind of funny. It was,
hi, do you need an architect?
Yeah, it was like literally that cheesy. So hey, you guys build stuff sometimes, right? No? Oh, you never have? Oh, okay, yeah. Those tactics don't work. It's but the most difficult things were, I think it's kind of like a mental thing, to be like, I guess for me, everybody's got a different story, but for me, I felt like, okay, so I finished, I did a degree, went to Harvard. I got to study under like all these like fabulous starchitects. I got to work at SOM on these like $1 billion projects. Then I went to like a pretty great firm here in Winnipeg working on big things. And here I am now, fixing a boiler room at the bottom of a building in the basement. And so, thinking that things are going to, you're going to incrementally get bigger and bigger and grow. But that there's a little self-doubt that kind of seeps back in, saying like, well, I'm seeing on LinkedIn, people who kind of stuck around where I was and they like got promoted, or they, they went and they're like, director of design at W Hotels or whatever. I'm just kind of making this up. There's some like equivalents, like, what, am I doing the right thing here? And so, I think, like when you're comfortable, doing what you're doing, and you realize that actually this has nothing to do with what other people are doing or how you perceive others to be doing. Actually, it's all internal. Like I can actually be super satisfied doing something, and then realizing that I actually did grow this thing. Well, I actually did do something a little bit bigger, right? So it's like the most difficult part is basically part of the best part too, and then sort of understanding, I think that those two things are like linked, then makes it a lot easier to be just positive and to cheer yourself on. So it's kind of like the like man against nature, man against man and man against himself, like those from English class back in grade 7. I'm sure that's politically incorrect now, right? Like the 3 types of conflict. I think for me it was kind of like man against himself. Like you realize that you're actually your own best friend and not your biggest critic. And then once you get that under control, I think then it, like the sky's the limit. And now I feel like the sky is the limit. It's like just I can do anything.
Yeah. I've it's a huge jump from when you're working for somebody and you're doing massive projects to working for yourself and doing something 1/10 of the size.
Yeah.
Working for that one project, because not only could you be, financing it, responsible for everything.
Yeah,
there's absolutely zero lifelines there.
Yeah.
And that one project
Yeah.
will create so much growth in you.
Yeah.
Way more than this.
Absolutely.
The 10th big project that you've ever done here.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
Yeah. And not to say that, guys out there, people out there who, you know, are working for others, like that is super, you know, everything is equally important, right? Like one isn't better than the other.
There's superstars out there.
Yeah.
They do incredible work.
Yeah, and then they become part of the team, right?
Yeah.
But you're absolutely freaking right. Like when you own it and the buck stops at you, you're your own lifeline.
But I think you're weird.
Yeah.
And I think I'm
You
weird.
think I'm weird?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I'm weird.
I think I'm weird, so that's
I think I'm legitimately crazy. To do and make some of the decisions that you make, right? Or that all of us business owners kind of make. Like it's a weird thing. What made you first want to become an architect?
I think I knew I wanted to be one before I could sort of vocalize it. So my mom traveled to Greece a bunch of times when I was a little kid, and my mom's whole side of the family is there, and so there's few. I think by the time I was like 8, I'd gone there like 3 or 4 times, and so this trip I went to with my mom when I was 8, this was my brother and my sister. She took us to a whole bunch of sites. So my mom's from. I'm giving you a long-winded answer, so just kind of tell me to cut to the chase whenever you want, Dan.
I think it's great.
So lots of ancient sites. So she's from a town called Epidavros or Epidaurus, Epidavros, which has this ancient theater that seats 14,000 people. And it's like 2,000 years old. It's just like phenomenal, right?
Okay.
So, you know, took me to this place, took me to like Mycenae. We're like in Agamemnon's tomb. I was like, this is freaking cool. It's like king from like the Trojan War or whatever. We're basically in this like hollowed out pyramid that's underground with like, you know, these like tunnels and light wells and stuff. And then we end up going to Istanbul, and we're like in Hagia Sophia, and it's like, frick, like this is so cool. And I always loved art. And I always loved history, and I just like those were kind of, you know, my dearest subjects. And then I also really like public speaking, and I like drama, and so you know, drama, architecture, public speaking, art, history. And so I actually had a cousin, another cousin, my cousin Sarando, who lives in Vancouver. Like literally, he was I think he was just randomly at like a family dinner once, and he's like. I think I told him, like, I'm thinking about going into architecture. And he goes, I think that would really suit you. I mean, you're an artist. You love history. You know, you'd probably be really good at business. And I was like, oh, I never really thought about architecture like that it, you know, had those facets. And so, yeah, so that was kind of like, so he helped me in that aha moment.
Interesting.
I actually applied for fine arts at the U of M. I remember dragging these giant, like, paintings and pastel drawings into one of the buildings. I got accepted, and I didn't sort of fill out the registration because like I'm going to do architecture instead of this. So I'm very close. It was kind of like a last minute decision to not go into fine arts. I might have ended up back in the same place anyway.
Well,
yeah, whatever. Yeah,
I feel it's a different set of skills.
Yeah,
used appropriately or passionately,
Yeah.
it's gonna bring you back to what you enjoy doing.
Yeah. So I used to do drawings, and my dad would frame them at the restaurant, and they were like all around. And I painted a mural, and I'd like sell like paintings and drawings and stuff. So,
Nice.
Yeah. And my art teacher, I remember Miss Riller. She encouraged me, like, you should be an artist. And I remember I said something stupid. I was like, I don't want to live in a trailer, you know. You kind of like relying on stereotype. I thought about, you know, when I was like 13 years old or 14 years old. So.
Yeah. She's like, I don't live in a trailer. I live under a bridge.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't realize how insulting that might have sounded, right? But now as a 42-year-old adult, I would have done it differently. But that's life.
Very fair. Very fair.
Yeah.
What do you think that, you know, you mentioned that a lot of people don't know what an architect does. What do you wish that more people knew about architects?
What do I wish that more people knew about architects? I would say I guess back to that first point I made, that all this sort of miscellanea, it's funny, there's jobs out there called, project manager, right? And it's funny because like an architect basically is the epitome of a project manager. You're managing work, across all aspects, and you're creating stuff at the same time. So like an architect is like a project manager plus a creator. And not only that, so like architects take care of like project accounting during construction. We go on site and we review contractor invoices. Most people don't know that we do that in most cases, and verify that what's been invoiced actually makes sense relative to the contract and what's on site, and that we have this power, depending on the contract we use, to certify or reject an invoice. Right? People are like, I didn't know you did that. We do a lot of paperwork during construction, so we don't just kind of draw something and then walk away from it. We draw stuff, but not just draw stuff, because the drawing is basically just like the fossil of all the conversations, all the research, all the like hooing and hawing, and not just the architect hooing and hawing, the clients, stakeholders, the city, the municipality, like everybody kind of has a say. Things come in into these documents that are like instructions for building. But then when they go out, if we're working in Part 3 of the building code, which most architects live in, we own it. And not only do we own it, we're responsible for it. We're responsible for making sure that this DNA that we've programmed actually makes its way into the world as we created it. So we've got we can't inspect every little bit of the project, right? Because the human and we're not supposed to either use the word inspection. We're just supposed to observe.
Yep.
But not only that, I think an important thing that most people don't realize is how we connect to the other professionals who work on a job. So some people are confused, like, well, what does an engineer do? Well, can't an engineer do that? I mean, I haven't heard that one for a long time, but most people who haven't done like a job that involves an architect don't realize that, okay, there's the architect, like in our case, there's some staff at the office, but we've got a mechanical engineer too. There might be a couple guys there, a couple people there. Electrical consultants, structural consultants, civil engineer for all like the underground, like gas, water, sewer, all that kind of stuff. You might have a landscape consultant. Okay, and then maybe you've got like a specialized project and you actually need like an acoustic consultant. There might be like a specialty person.
Yeah.
There might be a quantity surveyor. A quantity surveyor who kind of is helping you price the job and create reports so that you don't have a giant surprise by the time you're done, right? So, and then the architect is that person or collection of people that actually manage all of those different groups of people and are actually checking everything against everything and making sure, that the electrical design, plugs like in windows, that might happen, or that ducts fit, or that, like beams, there's like enough clearance under them. And so you're kind of like in this miscellaneous zone. And it's really weird because there are too many different sort of parts of the brain that get used on a project. So there's like this introverted thinker, researcher who's making sure that something's like specified properly. But then there's like, you got to have somebody who's like really yappy to just like ask all these questions and kind of move the conversation along quickly to get the information quickly. And then somebody who can manage sometimes people's emotions. Sometimes there's conflict between all these people, or sometimes there's not necessarily conflict, but just professional disagreement as to what standard applies and what's good and what's bad. So there's like, so it's kind of like structural engineering is like really specific. Mechanical engineering is like really specific. Electrical engineering is really specific. and then like civil engineering and landscape. So it's kind of like when you pull all of those parts out, everything that's left is architecture. It's like anything that doesn't fit like in a really easily defined bucket is architecture.
Interesting. I've never heard it described that way.
Yeah, and it's like really broad.
Okay. So in your firm, what is something that you believe that would go against kind of the norm of the industry?
What do we do that's against the... I'm gonna have to take a bathroom break now.
You totally can. I mean, it's when I look at building, right? When I look at residential building, which is what I do, I don't agree with a lot of it. I don't agree with 95% of the homes that are built here, right? And I've built my company kind of to be the anti or the antithesis of what I've been seeing and what I don't like. So, when you started Amphora, clearly there's, either whether it's value driven, you talked about ethics in here. I know that it's just like every profession, right? There's people that do it, and then there's all of those people within there that do something different.
I can't say that I've got like a easily digestible sentence. As you can probably guess by all my like verbose answers to your like really simple questions. But I would say it's a combination. Like what makes us different is I really deeply, and we really deeply care about doing what's best for the client in that specific situation. So, and the crazy, it sounds really goofy and cliche, but you actually need to find out what's important to your client and what they're trying to achieve, because sometimes,
which isn't always easy.
No, and sometimes people think that they know what that is right off the bat, and sometimes you think you know what that is right off the bat, and it's kind of like getting to know somebody. Like somebody might interview really well or poorly, but then maybe or you might have a couple of gut instinct feelings, and those are often kind of right. But if you listen over and over and kind of go over the same thing, like once you're sure about what they want, then you can kind of tailor your service to them in a way that's most valuable to them. And then sometimes they don't know what they need too, right? So I guess to summarize, it's like kind of understanding the project's parameters, like understanding like what's good for them, what's good for the project, what the priorities are, like just kind of solving all of that stuff is like really like at the core of doing something beautiful and then making it beautiful, right? And that's kind of the thing. And it's like, if you can do all that and then make it like look really beautiful and like perform well, then you're a good architect. And there isn't like one correct answer. That's the cool thing about it. Like there's a multiverse out there. Like you could probably have a billion beautiful, elegant, well-functioning, appropriate solutions, and they're not easy to get at.
Right.
So, and just the fact that like every project's unique, you gotta re-challenge your brain each time. And so I guess we're not like a cookie cutter firm. We don't do like one specific kind of work. We do get repeat work in certain areas, but it's that like intellectual challenge and that communication back and forth and understanding what people want and what they need. That's so.
Is it ever hard? I've heard stories and I've talked, when people either talk about architects or they'll talk about experiences or something like that. about the difference between kind of a client-driven project and a architect-driven project, as far as where the design comes in. So is there ever times when, you know, you're doing something that you yourself wouldn't do, but, you know, it is actually best for the client and it's what they want? Or how do you deal with that situation where you're designing something, you're just like, because there is an art. Right?
So when you get that, you know that you're not doing your best work when you're doing your
Okay.
And so I think, like at the beginning, right? Like especially when you're like working somewhere, you're junior, or even like out on your own at the beginning, you just kind of take everything that comes at you as like sacred, and it's like, well, this is what they want. This is what I got to do, I think the maturity comes where you're like, okay, this is what they're saying, this is what they want, but I'm going to challenge them. I'm gonna kind of put stuff out there, and I'm gonna get their reaction. And I think that's a really beautiful way of communicating as an architect, because sometimes you don't really have enough to go off of, so you just start putting things out there, and you see how people feel, and you see how they talk, and you find that common ground. So I would say no. Like I would never ever do something for somebody that I wouldn't do for myself. I would feel like I was doing a bad job.
Right.
And I think that's why they come to us. That's why clients are attracted to the kind of work that we do, are coming to an architect in the first place. Is they want something good, right? And they should be able to trust you. Now, if you're working with somebody who, like, you know, doesn't give a crap about, you know, what you're putting out there and what, you know, and they don't respect, where you're trying to move the thing, then, you know, maybe you're not a good fit for each other. Yeah. And that's okay too.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of architects, it seems like the commercial industry is a lot more prone to be architect driven. At least in Winnipeg, or through my experience. But, you know, dealing with the differences between commercial and residential. First, multi-part question.
Yeah.
How much residential do you do compared to commercial? And can you take us through the big differences between the two?
Okay. So overwhelmingly, our work is commercial, and commercial is kind of a funny term because it sort of includes like dozens of types. And so do you mean commercial?
I guess it would be anything not residential.
Okay. And so by residential, do you mean like single family house, or do you mean like 50 unit apartment building? Like, is that still residential for you?
I would say some of the bigger projects then turn commercial, right? Any time where you're jumping into part 3.
Right. Yeah. So I would say, you know, like the vast majority of what we do is part 3. And so, which is an interesting thing, because a lot of people, everybody lives somewhere. Right? And in Winnipeg, most people live in like a Part 9 building. So for your listeners, Part 9 is defined as like a small building. So like most houses, generally speaking, you know, there's all kinds of exceptions in here. Generally speaking, stuff under 6,000 square feet in footprint is a Part 9 building. So most houses, you know, don't grow past that, at least in terms of footprint, right? So I would say though, like, so the Part 9 stuff, the residential, can be really fulfilling, because that's where it gets really personal. Everybody knows what a good bathroom is, and what a good kitchen is, and what like a beautiful house looks like. Even, you know, there's multiple iterations of that, but that's something that everybody can connect to. It's just so basic to the human experience that can be like a really satisfying type of work to do, because it's just so universal, and anybody can just dive right into it. And then with commercial projects, I mean, man, like so many different kinds. It's like, and so many different kinds of clients like within those different zones. It's just I can't.
I guess
you can't generalize them.
There's probably a massive difference between private sector and public, though. Through the process.
Yeah. Public sector typically it has more steps, more bureaucratic. Often you're probably getting like your drawings like reviewed by like multiple groups of people, kind of like correcting your work. That happens a lot. Oftentimes, private sector usually is driven by speed, right? It's like, we gotta move in by this date, whatever, a lease is about to be signed or was signed or whatever, and there's all kinds of pressure to just like push stuff out quickly. So the challenge often with commercial projects, especially tenant fit ups, is doing a really great job under time pressure. Public sector is often like doing a really great job without like kind of falling asleep as you like wait for like the next kind of approvals to come back.
Can imagine. Now this is a very selfish question.
Yeah.
What do you find, whether it's in commercial, residential, and all of the above, the contractors that you're working with? Tell me what kind of make or breaks relationships and the projects themselves, and where can somebody support architects best
with contractors
while working with them?
It's all communication. It's about like the best relationships that we've had with contractors have been where you're working on the same team, right? Because everybody's working towards the same goal, right? Everybody wants to do a good job.
We hope
everyone.
That's what everyone wants.
So I think it's just kind of like an attitude thing at the beginning, right? To just like, just feel like you're supporting each other. So you're asking like, what can you do to support each other? It's kind of like in the rest of the business world, right? Like, don't write nasty emails to people. It's
very fair.
And I'm guilty of like I've made every possible error, and I'm trying to continually improve and figure out. I've gotten like maybe just like a smidge wise in the process, but it's like I think once you understand that you're all on the same team, that helps a lot. Being able to talk to people on the phone is like really important, like really, really important. I just and we've all experienced it, and in our field it can get intense too, where an email starts coming in and it's got like 3 pages of information. It's like, so and it's full of like different questions and stuff, and it's like, whoa, hang on a second, So, and sometimes you'll have situations where some people might expect everything to be in writing, right? Like everything's got to be in writing, and that like process of thinking has to be in writing, and it can be so counterproductive and so time consuming. I've just been in so many situations, and I think this is a value add that we bring, right? Just going back to the chatting and talking and understanding, like you could have like a pretty intense phone call and go through stuff and have somebody say, oh, I didn't think about it that way, or what about that, and you kind of miss that with email. So if an architect works with a contractor or vice versa, and you're able to kind of chat about stuff, I think that's where you start realizing some really cool efficiencies, and where you come up with really great solutions to things that come up on site. And you realize that you're on the same team. So like I guess those are the key pieces, and then that support goes both ways too, right? The architect should be able to call the contractor and have like a friendly yet candid conversation with them.
Yep. I've gotten in trouble a lot because I like to be on the phone. I like to talk to people like this. And even on the phone I want to hear how people are saying things.
That's right.
And what I've been really horrible at, and what my assistant is really good at, is taking notes. But also that whole like after the phone call, kind of debriefing,
the summary.
Hey, here's what we talked about. Am I correct in saying? I'm horrible.
Yeah, that's where you delegate.
Yes.
or maybe the phone call. The phone call might be 10 or 15 minutes, but you might solve one thing in it.
Mm-hmm.
So then the email might be really straightforward, right? Yeah, we talked about this, we both agree. Blank.
Yeah.
That's it. That's everybody's fear, right? That somebody might go back to the record and, the only thing that matters is what you wrote down, and clearly what you're writing down is important. But do you really need to write every single thing down?
Right. And I think that highlights your point about the people and relationships. Going back to pretty much the start, is that how you deal with people and the relationships that you develop. And, that's really, we always tell people that there's gonna be things that go wrong.
Yeah.
It just happens.
It's impossible for it to not happen.
Yeah. We're imperfect beings expecting things to be perfect.
Intelligent monkeys who wear clothes.
Yeah.
And use computers.
We're not far off, right? And so, whatever it is, anyone can have a bad day. Yeah. Anyone can have a fight with their husband or wife. Yeah. Anyone can have, very little sleep because they have young kids and they're not on their game or whatever it is. But it's the people that we want on our team when things go wrong, right? When shit hits the fan, who do we want to be next to? Who do we want on our team? Yeah. I think that the thing, the first time I heard about IPD or integrated project delivery, to me was just, I almost thought like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Why doesn't everyone do it like that? Like why wouldn't we care about what this person thinks and this person thinks before we finish either designing or building, the entire thing. So when we started, we legitimately crafted everything around integrated project delivery just so that we can bring people in. Consultation's huge, right? And just whether it's, that's good, or everything's good, but I changed this, or no, that's horrible. That'll never work. That was a big one for me when we were creating the back end. You had mentioned learning a lot when you started working for Number 10. Do you have any things that you would consider mentors as far as books, professors, people you worked with, actual people? What has helped shape you, whether it's in architecture or just life in general?
There's been a bunch of people along the way, kind of too many to mention. I guess I'll jump into my old office. I worked with an amazing guy. He's left us now, Ron Bassarab, who anyone who knew Ron just knew that he was a one of a kind guy. And Ron was very, very human. He's kind of like a very emotional guy, very brilliant guy, really creative. You get excited about stuff, and you kind of knew like when Ron got excited about stuff, like it was good, and you felt that it was good, and you also felt when things were like not good with him. But I felt like Ron was he was like a teacher. Like I was in my mid-20s, and he helped me, be my best version of myself, I think, as a designer, because of the encouragement, right? Like young professionals, they're looking up to the senior guys to, just, feel the feedback. Like you've got no reference point or whatever. And this guy just kept things like really real, and it was great. It was, he was just like a fantastic teacher. And it was like, it was okay that he was, I guess I was drawn to him because a guy like that was really good at what he did, and he didn't pretend to be a certain way. like didn't pretend to, sound like an architect.
Yep.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I've got another mentor who stood behind me in Minneapolis when I was growing up, Dean DeVolis, he's an architect out there who founded a firm on his own back in the 80s, with like 3 guys. He's grown it to like 50 people now. Just an incredibly successful, brilliant guy. So I had him around for a little bit, just talking to a young kid about the ropes and architecture in a way that I think some older people just wouldn't have the patience to, or just wouldn't care enough to. So there's a few people like that in my life who I was blessed to bump into.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and be nourished by. Yeah.
Where do you have to go, or what's your process to deal with when things aren't going your way? When things aren't going well, how do you deal with that?
So many ways things can't go well, Dad. Yeah. So
every day's a Monday.
Yeah. No, it's not like that. I think it's important to have good people around you. I've got a solid partner, Marianne, who is my wife, who's trained as an engineer. So we speak the same language, and in many ways, her thinking is kind of opposite to mine, and it's kind of like, it's just an amazing thing sometimes. Where,
in what way? That you're kind of more creative, she's more factually numbered.
She's smart.
Okay.
She's really smart.
Yeah.
And very patient, and kind of sits and thinks about stuff before she blurts it out. Like, I'm kind of the opposite. I'll sort of think it as it's coming out, and she does. So I think she's helped me through a lot of situations where, first off, it's like, well, hang on a second. I wouldn't have interpreted what you thought that was as blank, right? So, and that's been very helpful. So I think it could be easy to live in a bubble and, just have people like you around you and go off, in a certain direction. And the more kind of like sort of layers of perspectives you can have available to you just makes you smarter, makes you respond and react to things more intelligently.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. So in short, I just cry to my wife when something goes wrong, and she fixes it.
Mm-hmm. I'm really right there with you. Not far off at all. And then she'll say the most simple thing.
Yeah.
The most simple thing. Well, did you tell them this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how could they not think that?
That's right.
She's like, yeah, but did you tell them that? Okay. Text them. Problem solved.
Exactly.
Like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I love the perspective shift, and actually being aware and open, right, to that,
right,
and taking that kind of, I wouldn't say criticism, but just different perspective shifts is really huge.
Yeah, and then to be able to train yourself to kind of have that voice inside of you too, right? So maybe next time you don't have to like blurt everything out to somebody else, so you kind of learn to be more resilient on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Huge shift here.
Yeah.
Favorite restaurant in Winnipeg?
Oh man. It's too many.
I can do top 3.
Do top 3.
Yeah, then at least
so many categories.
Then at least you won't feel like you're neglected.
I'm gonna offend so many people because so many
they don't
friends and families like own restaurants and like have, you know what I mean.
You know what? I'll have a pass button. I'll get one of those red
I'll
pass
do that.
buttons.
Yeah,
I'm out.
Yeah.
So you got out of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
You got brought back to Winnipeg.
Yeah, I brought myself back. Yeah.
But why did you stay in Winnipeg?
Yeah. Why did I stay? I think it was, like I said earlier, that realization that things were like really comfortable here. And I don't mean like comfortable in like a lazy way.
Yep.
Comfortable in like a, wow.
Like a life is great way.
Like a life is great way. Like, I'm on a frickin' like bicycle with my soon-to-be fiance, you know, going down the road, enjoying ourselves at like, you know, 7 o'clock in the evening, you know, having ice cream and thinking about stuff and visiting places and not eating dinner at my desk. Because I was doing a lot of that at the time. It was kind of like every other night, eating dinner like in the office. And then when you partied like really hard, and then you kind of like came back and whatever. So I think that giant shift for me, I mean, it was kind of hard too, that shift, because it was like hitting the brakes after going like really, really, really fast.
I can imagine.
But realizing that there's a different way to like live, that was more peaceful and enjoyable, I think just kept me here.
Yeah.
And I always had Winnipeg in my heart. Like I always, you know, I had this, you know, speaking of delusions of grandeur, I remember thinking, wow, what if I come back to Winnipeg and found an office that does architecture, and it's like internationally renowned. I mean, Rem Koolhaas did it. He's in Rotterdam. Rotterdam's a dump. Like Winnipeg's so much better than Rotterdam, right? And so I always kind of had this like little mythology inside of me that I was going to come back, you know, and like do great things, you know, where I came from, and my family was here too, so that was like a huge draw.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you notice anything in Winnipeg? Do you notice any trends architecturally in Winnipeg that are either never going away, I guess you can't really call that a trend, or stuff that's newer and that you're seeing more of, or you have people asking more about it? Or
I would say in Winnipeg right now, like just generally speaking, I'll just make a general comment. I won't exactly answer that question right now. I'm seeing a lot of good design, like what I would say, like even 10 years ago, maybe, and definitely before that, that there are a lot of young practices in Winnipeg, and I think that's a lot a function of the exam regime for getting licensed in Canada, like that changed. I'm sure I'm saying all kinds of stuff I'm not allowed to be talking about publicly or whatever, but that's my opinion. I wrote the American exams and CARBs, which were really hard to pass, and so there weren't really that many young architects or young firms at the time. And by the time I finished my last exam, these new exams came in, and a lot of younger people got licensed as architects.
Interesting.
And a lot of new firms opened up. So there's a lot of competition, but it was actually, I think it was a really good thing, because there's a lot of younger people leading practice. So to kind of say, like, you know, there's like a trend of something, I would say the trend is that there is a trend of being on trend in Winnipeg, which is that was never the case. At least I didn't think it was the case when I was an architecture student, or even, you know, when I was working, you know, in New York. We didn't have a freaking IKEA. Not to say that that's, you know, like a gold standard of design, but there was a lot of design literacy, I think, like on a mainstream level that might have been, you know, not so strong, and it's come a really long way to the point that you see most new things going up here interesting in some way. Yeah. So how's that for a really good non-answer?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Crushed it. Is there anything in the industry that absolutely just kills you?
Good kill or
Bad kill.
Bad kill.
That you see over and over, that it just doesn't jive with you.
That's funny. It's funny because I had a couple pet peeves, and then we started doing it ourselves, so that you know.
Well, it can't be pet peeves anymore, I guess.
Yeah. Like I remember seeing like just so much, you know, like corrugated metal siding on, like, you know, like which should be like really expensive public buildings here. And it's like, man, it's like, this really is a farm town. You know, you don't see this stuff in other places as much. And then you know, you start doing it yourself and you're like, actually, this is kind of cool. I appreciate this.
I'll be part of this.
So yeah, things that absolutely kill me. So you're asking me to criticize now, so I have to be like really careful.
It doesn't even have to be other architects' work. Like it's not just saying kind of in your in our house.
Okay, I'll tell you what kills me. What kills me is I gotta be careful about this.
This is going to be the email after. Okay. 1 hour or something. And we can cut it out. Well, how about this? You knew you were coming on the show.
Yeah.
Is there anything that...
Why didn't you prepare more for this?
Is there anything that you hoped I would ask you that I haven't asked you?
No, not really. Yeah, you know what? I apologize. I really came into this very impromptu.
This is great.
Yeah.
Because it's more real. Like I don't send out questions to people, right? Because I want you to be real. I want you to think things through. Like I don't expect people to have all the answers, right? Like,
well, you know what's gonna happen, right? I'm gonna go to bed at night. I'm gonna have the best answers for you, like ever.
I think you did, because you go from your gut, right? and you said it. Usually the first gut feelings are the correct ones. So. Listen, I'll be respectful of your time here, because I think that we could probably go on and on, actually, and I think you've got a lot more in there that I haven't touched. But I really enjoy. I've enjoyed our talks. I enjoy your view on things, and especially client focused, their journey. You mentioned the feelings involved, which working in residential is all feelings with the client.
Oh yeah.
And so I really appreciate that. We've never worked together yet, but I'm looking forward to the day that we can. And you are absolutely welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you.
And I really appreciate you being here.
Hope your viewership doesn't plummet after this interview, Dan.
When it goes from 3 to 2, I mean, hey, I'm really not too concerned.
All right, well,
but thanks so much for being here.
I'm honored that you asked me to come on the show, so thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay.